everybody. It's Ellen Farrell at InvestorQ&A. I'm here today with Natasha House from Matriarch Entertainment. So this is a North American-based company which has a mandate to amplify the female voice by creating and commercializing kind of artfully crafted stories. And so Matriarch is focused on developing, producing, and financing original live-action scripted and non-scripted film and TV series. And so when they talk about amplifying the female voice, that could come in a variety of different ways, right? So it could be a female writer, it could be a female director, a female lead in the role, or perhaps a authentic representation of a female, story or voice, and so on. And so Natasha, as the CEO and the producer of Matriarch Entertainment, wears a variety of hats and has to kind of be a builder of these, kind of financing, production, and distribution sorts of activities. Natasha, you once told me that when you start a project, like a new project, right, that you live with it for 20 years, that it becomes like, a project, a product, is something that you have to kind of maintain. Tell us what you mean by
that. So I think probably the best example of that is the Fatima project, which was the last project that I was a service producer on. So I worked as a freelance producer for 20 plus years. So working through utilizing my networks and my, producer acumen to be hired to work with other production companies to build their projects. And actually, so the Fatima movie was the last release that I worked on, and that actually, I'm still living that today, but that actually started for me in 2006 as a 10-minute short film that I grew into a $2 million feature film that then we grew again into a $25 million movie. And I was integrated throughout that process primarily because of my key relationships and knowledge within the field. And I'm sort of the story specialist because of the longevity and time that I've actually spent within this story. And also then a key influencer within the main audience dynamic. So whilst my job as a producer is to really raise the finance, bring in the creative, navigate and actually build the positioning of the project, the product, let's call it, because it's service and product, and then producing a product that we can then sell to distributors to license the product for international distribution. So, but then I also became a key influencer in the audience segment, which is slightly outside of my sort of jurisdiction because of my longevity in it. And I still now maintain those key relationships with people like the government of Portugal, the Shrine of Fatima, and the Vatican, in order to continue to mobilize the commercial sort of aspect of the movie and its sales and promotion. So yeah, it's been with me since 2006. So it's just nearly 20 years.
just short of 20 years. So
and that's just one project.
Yeah, and that's just one project. So it's like every new production that you would work on, like a startup, because I mean that's where you and I met. Through the startup world and so on. Was that what drew you to looking at some of these kind of startup concepts and so on?
Absolutely, yes. So as we were hitting distribution, so we were actually the most commercially and critically successful movie of the pandemic. We released right in the middle of the pandemic. And right at that point, it was like, okay, world's in shutdown. What's Natasha going to do next? And so Matriarch was a business concept around amplifying the female voice, actually working to amplify the means of production by bringing in female investors who then are investing in projects that women are building, developing, and producing that represent and tell women's stories, untold histories from the past. It's a rebranding of femininity, so we're stopped, we're no longer the victim in every movie. It's so boring. It's like, where are all these role models for women today to actually aspire to go, well, I can do that because she did it, and to actually see that amplified on the screen? What was very interestingly considered a minority sort of representation, being a woman, and yet we still occupy 49% of the viewing consumer public.
Yeah.
And it's been such an interesting ambition that's coincided with, like, post-Me Too movement. There's been a real consolidation of women in power as maintaining their decision-making authority in the choices and decisions around what content is being produced by women, for women, about women. And it's working. I mean, 2023 was an absolute golden year for female creators and business women, particularly in the entertainment world, with, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and then Barbie. So, there's very much this wave of, let's call it the commercial realization of the power of the female dollar. And interestingly, there's only 3% of the producing population at the moment are female-led companies producing projects for women, about women, by women. So
wow, almost as bad as the venture capital industry.
a really interesting new world that we are bravely trailblazing. And it doesn't, like, when I say bloody birth, I mean that very genuinely. It's a very interesting world.
Well, you operate in an industry which it seemed to me, as over the course of 12 weeks or so, I came to realize was a very, very complicated business model. So the kind of the construction of kind of coming up with the idea and then actually making it happen, and then when it does happen, how you sell that and where that goes, and that the divvying up of the pie, so to speak, seems to be like a very complicated business.
There's many stakeholders. There's many well, I mean, it can be simplified, but it has a complexity because you're dealing with a creative industry. It's where industry and creativity really meet, but at high budgetary levels. So there's a lot of stakeholders and there's a lot of interests within that. And so, yes, I mean, the business model for Matriarch itself is we do both service and then product. So we build sort of our own IP. We have a slate of IP that we've built and created and developed. And the primary reason for actually going out there with a launch slate of original IP is because, film is and TV and entertainment is notoriously high risk. And like traditional film funds and financiers, like to mitigate their risk by actually investing across multiple different products.
Yeah.
As the stats go, I think it's like 1 in 5 entertainment properties actually makes profit, which is a really interesting dynamic. But all of the equity and investment that lives within each of those projects still has life because of the waterfall of priority as to who gets paid out first in terms of lenders, banks, borrowers, marketers, studios, equity investors, and until you kind of even hit that profit mark. So yes, there's definitely complexity, and that's just one project.
Yeah. And of course, that's a similar strategy that's used in venture capital. And actually, the proportions are about the same because, venture capitalists would say, the average would be out of every 10 deals they do, they'll expect 2 of them, to be blockbusters, pay for all of the rest, let's say. And so that's about the 1 in 5 that you mentioned in the entertainment industry. So yeah, I guess I didn't realize that it was that difficult, right, to make as you call it, a property that is that successful that it really starts to pay all those individuals and groups that are a part of it.
Yeah, we try to navigate through that complexity by actually having what I call like pre-established relationships with distributors, studios, or streamers. Matriarch itself, in terms of the kind of key leaders, are all, we'll call ourselves veteran entertainment industry professionals. And we already have established relationships with, an international distributor. We have quite a unique value proposition in that what we're actually doing is maximizing our potential for revenue generation by pushing our original content out across multiple platforms. So whilst we are kind of scripted specialists, so we produce primarily scripted content, so that's film, premium TV series. We also then produce like scripted content that has crossover factual appeal. So we also then push out our projects, develop and push out our projects into both documentary, factual, and also then scripted content. And whilst both of the distribution models overlap, it's also different groups and different peoples within both subsectors of those industries. But we already have those relationships. So we try to alleviate and mitigate that risk even more by actually developing projects that already have what we'll call a global distribution deal in place. So it's kind of a little bit more of a transparent route to market necessarily, but that's ultimately how we're kind of managing our investor profile to be able to showcase the value of success and recoupment plus profit, or plus a reward is much closer to reality than, we're just going out there and blindly developing projects, passion projects.
Yeah. Now, when I met you, you were working on, it was a big deal, and the financiers were in another country, and I'm presuming that you haven't kind of made an announcement of any sort, but what can you tell us about that particular maybe deal or that effort? Because it's I guess the most recent one. And when we see an announcement on your website, we'll know what it was about and so forth. What was it like dealing, okay, for example, with investors who are in another continent?
Matriarch is a global company, so international company. We have global reach. We work both domestically with a domestic fund, but we also have access to international investors. And so with that specific project, that is the first project in our service division. And 12 months since the project was positioned to me, and that project came to me through somebody within, a trusted person within my network, who specifically came to me because the story of this project is set between Canada, the UK, and Switzerland, with a primacy of the actual locations happening in Toronto. And so he came to me because Canada itself has a world-class or world-leading incentives, grants, supportive sort of film incentives, and also then tax credits. And so Matriarch, we've kind of established ourselves as a company with an operational center here in Vancouver, because it actually positions us very well for international co-production and to be able to maximize those tax credits. So when the project came to me, interestingly and initially, I was kind of batting it aside for a little while because it didn't really, on the surface, meet the transparent mandate of Matriarch. So it's really caused us to kind of push our boundaries a bit and go, okay, so helped us to define much more succinctly what it is that we're actually doing here and why we're doing it. I kind of looked it over and then pushed it out into what I call our team, which is, we have a very close group of creatives, and looked it over and decided to do a rewrite on it. And with the rewrite, we actually modernized it, amplified the female characters, switched out a bunch of the characters to make it much more balanced in terms of its representative capacity. So it wasn't so male focused. Rewrote some of the key characters and then built up the female characters to have much more prominence within the actual screenplay itself. So the film that's actually is being built now is it has the same story, but it has very different. It has a different way of telling that same story. So it's still very, very much in process in terms of the negotiation of that. So we got development money released. So that was to actually build the concept package and to do the rewrite. And that was from an investor in the UK. And now we're going in for the second round in order to fully develop the project, which is then to basically commercialize it. So we're heading in, I'm right in the midst of negotiation for the next tranche of the equity finance piece of this project. So there's what I would call, there's definitely intricacies to what I would call international business. There's a top end cost of the international travel, whilst we can do a lot online right now. In person really does help when it comes to actually developing relationship with financiers specifically and investors. And so there's a little bit more of a top end on that. But then also sanctifying that investment, because the investment's going to be coming out to Canada and the company's being set up in Canada, the production company's being set up in Canada to actually hold all of that IP. So there's obviously complexity to that. And then ensuring that those investors, financiers are able to benefit from as close to the full profit as they can, because there's obviously international taxations. So there's, we need to try and so there's a corporate complexity to setting up those kind of financing plans to ensure that the investors' money is returned with as much of a profit margin as possible.
Mm-hmm. So kind of in the midst of all of this, kind of creative and production and, kind of very, very well developed and complicated industry, where did you see the value in taking InvestorQ&A at the time? Like, what motivated you at that point in time to do it, and what kind of value did you get from it, a la your world?
Well, it was invaluable for me. Thank you very much, Ellen. I was recommended for the program because I was starting my VC push. And that's very specifically not only for the company itself, but obviously then for the projects that we're actually building. So, we're kind of hitting two very distinct marks. And I think I mentioned I came out of a very bloody birth, and it was a first time I'm a first time entrepreneur. Whilst I've had a very entrepreneurial spirit in terms of actually managing and running a company and taking on those new knowledges, I certainly came out with realizing that I needed to release my past stories. I was most intrigued by the statistics that your company actually, obviously the research and statistics that you push out there around the different questions that female entrepreneurs and are asked when they go into those VC kind of environments and the pitch environments. And that's certainly very strongly my experience to date. I'm working primarily with at the moment, with this one project anyway, with male investors and even female VCs, very interestingly, seem to still go down the same route. So it really, truly helped me to position Matriarch in a very kind of forward thinking, positively framed, presentation environment. And it really taught me the value of mitigating those core questions that we get hit with that are kind of more negatively defined, and enabled me to translate those into commanding the conversation so that I can actually then discuss what it is that I think they need to know about my business and the projects that we're actually raising the finance on. So it was invaluable for me to shift a mindset from reactivity to create a ship to a degree, to really take control of the narrative of my company, the projects that we're working with, and frankly, myself as a professional. So yeah, it was phenomenal.
Oh, well, that's great. That's good. That's good to hear. And there's until we actually had this discussion, I didn't realize that some of the financing that you would have to look for, sounds or kind of behaves a little bit like the kind of financing that we think of traditional VCs and startups with tech companies and so on. There's a bit of a similarity there in the kind of pursuits that they're engaged in, and covering off a variety of different investments over a variety of different startups or productions, so that they can find the ones that are really going to hunt. So how long do you think it will be now before before you kind of get this next round, and then you would be able to talk about the project?
I will say at an optimistic level, I'm hoping within the next 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. All right.
As far as the other projects, I'm in discussions at the moment with a film fund, and well, that could be 4 to 6 months yet until we're really sort of in a position to be able to make an announcement on that. There's still some work to do on that, as we work through and navigate through these parts. So, it's all, as again, it's that I'm wearing the CEO hat today, and the lipstick's on.
CEO hat, lipstick on. Well, if you go to Matriarch Entertainment, I'm speaking to the audience who will be listening to this. So if you go to Matriarch Entertainment, you'll see some of the other projects that Natasha has worked on, and you'll be able to see the new kind of production announcement when it's released. So stay tuned for that, and maybe after we some of that plays out, you can come back and tell us a little bit, because of course we're all about women, right? You're all about women, and we're all about women, and so you're building a story that's going to be amplifying the female voice, and that's in a different way exactly what our objectives are, amplifying the female voice. So love to talk to you again when we can talk more
Absolutely.
about the stories themselves.
Fantastic, Ellen. Thank you. Yes, I'd love to.
Okay, thanks very much for being with us, Natasha. Everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll hope to see you soon.